Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Ignite Your Soul Connection. This is day 3, and we are talking about parental support. If you have been with us for the past 2 nights, you know that we have really gotten some amazing insights and feedback and encouragement from the speakers that have been with us, and it's been really, really great. So, we're going to continue with that tonight. And for those of you that don't know, my name is Shemsu-t. Other people call me Rita Stewart. And I am the owner of Masterforce and the founder of Masterforce International Leadership Academy. We have actually been doing this segment, Ignite Your Soul Connection, now for over 10 years. We started in, I want to say 2010, 2011, with the intention of assisting people in finding out what does it mean to ascend. And we realized that there was a lot of spiritual knowledge that needed to be shared inside of our community. So we decided to offer this as a gift. In that first year, we actually did 15 evenings. We won't do that anymore. So we're really going to do just 7 nights, and this is night 3. But tonight, you're going to get to meet Dr. Sanja and Enedina, and they're going to share with you a lot of insights and even just their own personal journey in providing parental support to their children. So, for those of you who are joining us live and those of you who are listening later, we just thank you. We thank you for taking time out for being here, and we hope that you find this useful. So now let's meet our guest and let's have them introduce themselves. And I will start with our oldest Master Force coach, not old in years, but in how long she's been certified. And that would be Enedina Woodward. Enedina, can you come in and introduce yourself and let people know about you and what you're up to and where you live? You're muted.
You. Can you hear me now?
There, we can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, hi, I'm Enedina Frencha. I am I have been certified with Master Force since um, I believe it's August of 2012. So I've been certified since August of 2012, so it's been a while. Currently, I reside in Dallas, Texas. I relocated here in September of 2019. So coming up on my 2-year anniversary of living down south. And I am the the oldest of a set of twins. But me and my twin are the babies of 7. So there are 7 of us, and my twin brother is the only boy out of all of us.
Wow.
Um, I have a son and a daughter, 23-year-old son and a 20-year-old daughter who both reside in Chicago. And my parents are both deceased, but I was born here in Texas, but raised in Chicago. Once my daughter graduated from high school, I decided to go ahead and make my way back down here so I could spend more time with my family here in Texas, who I didn't get a chance to grow up with. So, yeah, that's my story.
Very cool. So, and then, and Adina, what had you actually become a Master Force coach?
So I was always the person in my family who people would come to about, whatever it was they were going through. I was the person, I was the strong one, the one that everybody talked to, that everybody sought advice from. At that particular time, I was kind of needing a push myself to try to get myself stronger, to get
Mhm.
myself on more solid footing as far as me as an individual. And I needed to have a circle that I could go to because I was always the person that everybody went to. So I saw the the posting on Facebook. And funnily enough, I didn't realize that it was Mushim Soup that was over Master Force until I got there. And then I saw her go up there and I'm like, oh my God, that's food. I see her all the time. Because we always had I can't remember the name of it, but what was it that we used to go to at that restaurant downtown? Where it'd be
Uh,
like free once a month.
the one that I
Uh
used to host, yeah,
yeah,
Karma Kitchen.
Yep, at Karma Kitchen. And that was where I met her. And then we became Facebook friends. And then after that, it was just kind of like, we would just see each other. So it was just that energy that that synchronicity that brought us together again for us to be able to for me to be able to do Master Force with her. But, you know, at that time, I needed that. That was a journey that I needed to go on, and it helped me to become stronger. I learned about why I'm the strong person, about why I was the one that everybody would come to, and why I needed that, and why I also needed to learn how to step back from that and just be myself without the cap of being the strong person. So
Very cool. And thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here with us. It really matters. So thank
you're
you.
welcome.
All right. All right, Dr. Sanja, can you come in and introduce yourself and tell us about yourself and your journey and what you're up to and all that good stuff?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Sonja Jones Manson, and I have been a certified Master Force Life Coach since 2015.
Wow.
And what brought me to this journey was it was a combination of Moot and Shoot and my husband. So I actually met Moot at a New Year's Eve gathering at one of my oldest friends' house. And it just so happened to be around Moot's birthday as well. And she was just a beacon, just a light in the space. And she and my husband spent a lot of time talking at that particular engagement, which was fine because I was there mingling with my friends anyway. But afterwards, I got a chance to get a little bit of an earful just of the things she was speaking of. And at the time, both my husband and I were in a space of seeking um, regarding our own spiritual journeys. And so he continued to talk about and praise Moot, and from that one long conversation they had. And I did a little poking around about the organization that she had founded, Master Force, and got a chance to speak with her again before I made the decision, both me and my husband, to go down that track together
Yeah.
and become certified Master Force life coaches. And it was very encouraging to both of us. I think she liked the idea of the couple going through going through the process together, and we definitely grew a lot individually and as a couple, and getting clarity on our purpose and getting clarity on our abilities. So the process of becoming a certified life coach is really more for you than necessary than the others, because coaching begins with you, and we learned that in that space. So that's how I came to get this title of certified life coach. I am from Chicago, Illinois, born and bred, as I like to say, West Side all the way. Um, and my family is I call it a mixed family and not blended because we weren't necessarily blended.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
my father had 9 children. I was the second to youngest of those, and of us three had the same, had the same mother. So kind of shows you just the dynamics. I have siblings in California and Arkansas, in Alabama right now, in Florida, so we're all spread around, and we spent much of our adult lives just trying to build relationships with each other because we didn't grow up together necessarily. Um, and then my mom has 3 children, and I'm the youngest of three and the only girl. And I did grow up in the household with my mom and my 2 brothers. And so, interesting dynamic there, just a lifetime of trying to piece together a fractured family
Mm.
and getting to know each other. And then myself, I am the mother of 7 wonderful children, 4 of which are my biological children. And my husband and I, we do have a blended family.
Mm-hmm.
And we met each other, both of us had 3 children of our own when we met. And then together we had a little girl who's the baby, who's my only girl. And so we have the joy of this blended family. Now his 3 were really older and grown. So in our household, it was really just the 4 of us. But we definitely have enjoyed loving and nurturing our entire blended family. So that's the family dynamic that I was raised in, and then the family dynamic that I have the joy of facilitating, I would say.
Boy, and all I could think of was you. Do you ever have time alone? Have you ever had time alone?
Right.
That's a great question, and I'm not sure. When I was younger, I had a lot of time alone, but because my brothers and I grew up in a house we were 7 to 8 years apart.
Wow. Okay.
So I did get to have a significant amount of time alone, but as an adult in my own family, probably no. Nah, I'm gonna have to say no.
Yeah, I can imagine. But that's coming. That's coming. That's coming.
It is.
So that's really it's so exciting because we get to talk about the different methodologies inside of so many people because Enedina has a large family, you have a large family, and so we get to actually see it, because we're talking about parental support. And I want to get right into it because the destiny cards have come up on Monday night and Sunday night. It came up again on Monday night. So I want to bring it right in today. How would parents actually use the destiny cards, the numerology, the natal chart? How is that used, and even why is that important for raising children? I mean, why is that even a thing? People saying, I don't even believe in astrology, right? However, it does make a difference.
Yeah.
So, who wanted to answer? Enedina, you want to start in there?
Sure. So for me, that's something I wish I had known about prior to when I first discovered it in 2012 while we were going through our certification. Because it would have explained so much. It would have given me a lot more insight into who my two young adults were at that time, like who they were, what their destiny was, what it was they came here to teach me, what it was they came here to learn, what it was that they came here to give to the world, to the universe at large. If I had known that, I think some of the things that I had done as a parent might have been a little bit different, but I think it's important to know that, to have that information, because it gives you a rubric to look at as far as when you are interacting with your child, especially at certain ages. I think in our community, just in the Black community in general, that we have a tendency to view certain traits as bad or negative, or um there's always a negative connotation to it. There's never an attempt to understand, only an attempt to control what we view as behavior that is unbecoming based on our own raising from our parents and from their parents, and just from society at large. What we view as discipline in many instances is not necessarily, it's that's a rough one for me, because I did not discipline my children as my mom disciplined me,
Yeah.
because I didn't think it was effective. I attempted to be the type of adult that I wanted them to grow into, and I'm proud to say that they they did. That they A lot of the things that I thought that they didn't know, that they hadn't learned, that they didn't pick up from me. Now that I'm not there and I'm like completely hands off in a completely different state, now they're doing those things, and so I can kind of breathe a sigh of relief and say, okay, you did understand why, high quality nutrition is important to you being able to do the type of things that you want to do. You did understand, um, why fasting is important, why meditation is important. And they still practice these things to this day. Like my children will tell me, okay, well, when they come visit me, they're like, well, mom, I'm not eating any dairy. I'm not doing any meat. So, you're going to do vegan for us while we're here. And I'm like, am
Okay.
I?
Well,
I'm
you
just like, oh yeah,
definitely you
right.
know how to. That's for sure.
Exactly. But it's just so funny, because everything that I used to do when I would have them in the kitchen with me and they would be cooking, and now they know how to do all of those things, and they practice those things on their own without me having to be there to try to make sure that they're doing it. But I think if you know what your child's purpose is, it helps you to understand them better. So when they're exhibiting certain behaviors, you have an understanding of how to direct them without making them feel bad about a decision that they're learning, because this is their new incarnation. They don't know everything that they're supposed to know, and they're trying to navigate the world as they see it
Mm-hmm.
at the age that they are at that time. Um, a lot of people, and especially I see it a lot in our community, that they'll kind of like, they'll bash other communities because of the way that they raise their children. But I kind of see it a little bit differently now, because if you can help your child create an understanding of something that could harm them without making them feel bad about wanting to be harmed, because they don't know that they're going to be harmed. But
Mm-hmm.
again, they're learning their environment. They're learning, what they're supposed to know to grow up and be, big and strong. And so if you can learn how to allow them to do that with while teaching them why them necessarily making that decision is not in their highest interest,
Mm-hmm.
then that's a beautiful thing. Um, I feel it is counterproductive to either exhibit a behavior that you don't want your children to do, and then tell them not to do it, as opposed to just not doing that behavior in front of them and allowing them to see like resolution type practices when you're trying to resolve a situation with other adults or other people, so that they can then emulate that when they're dealing with their peers and when they're dealing with the adults who have to, mentor them or, be over them for any part of the day. So I think the birth charts are important. I also think the destiny cards are important because it gives you insight into what your relationship is supposed to be with them, with your child, and what your child has come here to teach you about yourself. Those
You,
things are really important because it puts you in a position where both of you all are teaching each other, as opposed to you just feeling like I'm the adult, so you're just supposed to do what I'm telling you to do. No, they're not. They're supposed to be able to look to you for guidance, but their decisions should still be their own, without them feeling like, well, you're going to be disappointed, or you don't want, you're not going to love me as much, and things like that. Like, I've never been that way with them, and I've always told them, like, I just want you to live your making. I don't want you to make a living. I want you to live your making. I don't want you to be,
yeah,
unhappy, or to just be coggling, being a part of the a cog on the wheel. I
right.
want you to really, 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 really be free and just be able to explore and just see what your gifts are supposed to give to the world, and how that's supposed to affect you as well. So
I love that you brought up the piece about they teach us.
yeah,
Because when we think of teaching, we think of somebody standing here going at the board doing this, and it's like not
right.
really. It's displayed in their behavior, it's
Yep.
displayed through their questioning, it's displayed in how they challenge us, it's displayed in the mirrors that they hold before us, just being
Yeah.
themselves. And if
Yeah.
we're able to use the destiny cards to see that, we can actually, gain more insight, not just in them, but in ourselves. So
Yes.
that's where the teaching comes in,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Dr. Sandra, what about you? Do you have anything to add to this?
Yes, and I completely wholeheartedly agree with what Indina has shared. And so me personally, I have not gotten into the Destiny cards. I'm just now getting into it. I was introduced to them.
Yeah.
I'm just now making my way through my to-do list
Yes, yes,
down to the Destiny cards. Um, so I'll focus more on the natal charts,
yep.
which are astrological charts that show the location of the planets and the signs within the houses, um, at the very exact moment of your birth.
Yes.
And I think it's important to understand exactly what was going on in the cosmos at the moment you came and greeted the world, because it speaks to what I describe as some of your natural bent.
Mm.
Um, and you can go to places like astroseek.com and get free natal charts generated through their online portal. If you know your time of birth, you know your children's time of birth, and those are fine and they give you explanations. But I strongly recommend that if you have not done so, if you get a natal chart, that you have a professional walk through and do your natal chart reading for you and for your children together. And you can see some of the synchronicities between the two. There's a house, an astrological house of the 12 houses for the mother that kind of gives let you know what your mother wounding might be, what your
Mm-hmm.
father wounding might be, because we're here to wound our children. I know people don't like to hear that, but it's part of their development and growth process.
Mm-hmm.
So your natal chart helps give you insight to this. Now, I always like to put a disclaimer out there, because astrology, I don't think, is a tool to say, to use as an excuse to dismiss and say, well, this is how I am,
No.
because this is where the stars and the planets were aligned. I'm destined to be this way, because we ultimately have control. But it is to let you know what your natural bents are. And so as we move through events such as retrogrades and eclipses and different planets, you can understand how you might be impacted, how your children might be impacted as they grow and develop and they move through different milestones in their lives, simply just from being aware of what was going on in the cosmos at the moment of their birth. And so that's a very powerful tool, just to give you insight, because it doesn't give us the answers we may be seeking, but it gives us guardrails as to how to move through a particular moment or a particular episode in either our lives or our children's lives. And it gives us something to kind of take our temperature with, and to take our children's temperature with as well. So I think it's very important to know. We just received my daughter's time of birth, because they had stopped printing it on the birth certificate,
Yes, you have to
Yes,
ask
they
for
did.
it. You
and
have
we
to
Mhm.
had to
ask for it.
yeah, we had to figure out how to ask for it. And so my husband got it. And so all this time, she's a cusp baby.
Mm,
And so we were, assuming it was Taurus, because she was on the cusp of Gemini and Taurus. But now we have the exact time. Not only do we find out that she's, a solid Gemini, but
mm,
she has double Aries energy in
mm,
her moon and her rising.
mm,
And we were like,
mm.
okay,
That explains some
these
things.
12 years make sense now.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it makes some things clear, but it helps us understand, especially as she's coming into pre-adolescence, thinking about, okay, how are we nurturing this energy that's very raw in her right now,
Yes.
and how are we helping her navigate it? Um, and it helps us facilitate conversations around it as well.
Yeah.
And that is so great. And just as you were talking, I was very, oh yeah, Mercury goes direct today. Yay! No.
Spirit fingers.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Oh,
Thank you. And I tell myself all the time, why does it seem to be a Mercury retrograde when we are doing Ignite Your Soul Connection? Because now you
Hmm.
have to navigate all of that in the background, right?
yeah.
So now I'm glad that you brought up the word communication, because how do those tools actually feed your communication with your children, and how can you use it to actually have effective communication with them? Either one of you. Mm-hmm.
So, like I mentioned, for the natal charts, it serves as a temperature check, as kind of what's going on in different areas. So for those of you who may not be aware, like each house, each of the 12 astrological houses, symbolize different aspects of our lives, whether that's career, money, spirituality, etc. And so, understanding what was going on in those houses at the time, how the energy was being influenced in those houses. Um, and with a profession, when you get a professional natal chart reading done, they can help you understand what the implications are of the placements of the planets within those houses as well. That's why that's so important. So, knowing that, career might be a driving factor for my daughter helps me understand, more about the things that might inspire her or drive her without,
Highly ambitious.
highly ambitious, right, at a very young age. But
Mm-hmm.
and so understanding that that's something to be nurtured, and helping me to communicate that nurturing to her. So that's how it helps in communicate. It helps me with the front end of communication, which is deciding what you're going to communicate, deciding how you're going to communicate, because communication is a cycle, right? It's
Yep.
giving information, is receiving how the information is received. So on that end, it informs that as well. But communication, is very, very key, is one of my key points in raising children, and just being transparent and open, having just very plain conversations that's age appropriate, always age appropriate. um, but those tools kind of help you filter out your own communication, and it also serves as a self check as well, because with those tools and how you may respond to certain things, at least for me, it has been a space of me realizing where my own resistance was, where my own where I may have held certain ideologies or thoughts about certain aspects of your being, whether it was how ambitious should you be, some gender stereotypes that I may have been
Yes.
ascribing to. Um, and like what's in the cosmos, you rather boy or girl, it doesn't care.
Nope.
So
Mm-mm.
you can't, so making sure that I'm not imposing my own
Will.
restrictive thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
ideas
Mm-hmm.
onto my children. The cosmos, the natal charts kind of help you check that in yourself.
Yes. And Adina, what would you say to that?
I completely agree with her. For me, okay, so there's always this different dynamic that goes on with both of my children. So with my daughter, if there is a conflict, she just bows down. Like she does not challenge me at all because she knows that my Leo is going to attack her and just like cut her down immediately. So when she feels me, and we know each other because we communicate, we're very good at communicating. So she knows that if she challenges me, that's just going to make me more upset. So she'll just say, okay. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and I'm okay. All right. Let me calm down because you didn't took the whole fire out of out the whole argument. You just
I don't
snatched
even know what to
the
say to
whole
that. You
energy
just said
like snatch. And she does that, and every time she does that, I'm in awe because she knows exactly what to do to just get the conversation back on track, so
mm-hmm.
that we're not mad at each other, and we can kind of focus on where the control drama is happening in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
My son is a completely different ball of wax because he always challenges me. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just sitting there and I'm like, okay, so I'm going to ask another question because it appears that you are either blissfully unaware or you are intentionally antagonizing me because you're trying to act like you don't know, but you do. And it'll just be like, and he'd be like, okay, but it's never just, okay, mom, you're right. Okay, mom, I can understand what you're saying. No, it's but, and I'm like, oh God, if you just do not be quiet right in this moment. And he does the same thing with his dad. And so there's this like when me and his dad talk, it's so funny because he's like, yeah, he be doing that with me too. Blah, blah, blah. And we're like both there sitting there like comparing notes. And it's just always so funny because in my mind, I'm like, okay, he's the oldest. And so he's older to the point where he'll be a little bit more assertive in why he believes what he believes, or as far
Mm-hmm.
as why he believes that he's right. But also, you know, it's just like, okay, well, I believe that this is right. And can you be okay with me believing that this is right? And then it's like, okay, sure, why not?
But
Unless it's something that's
in
affecting the whole household, it's just like,
right. But in Adina, your older child is also a Master Force certified coach.
I
So
know,
there,
I know.
there are some things and tools that he also has
Yeah,
that can challenge you in the moment,
yeah,
and he really actually doesn't have to come to you anymore for guidance or direction, right? He's kind of just really telling you what's going on, right? Is that
yeah. That's now, but he's the child that I know if something happens to me, he's gonna take care of me. Like my
yes?
daughter, I know she'll take care of me too at some point. It don't mean she don't love me. It just means that she'll be like, okay, mama, well, let me check my calendar because
I have other things to
I'm
do.
booked and busy, okay?
Mhm,
With
mhm.
my son, I mean, well, with my oldest, he's kind of like, he's just kind of like more laid back with it. We don't butt heads as much because, they're not in my household anymore.
Mhm.
He's with his dad and my daughter's with her godfather. And so it's kind of like, that's been a really big challenge for me though, as far as communication and those control dramas that take over because I'm accustomed to, you know, Johnny on the spot. Like if they need something, I'm there. And now I think that it's still challenging for me to, reconcile them not needing me now because they're both, young adults and I'm in a completely different state. And my daughter had to like point that out to me the other night. She's just like, well, mom, if anything happened, you're 15 hours away. I mean, what you gonna do?
Wow.
And I was like,
Wow.
You know what?
Mm-hmm.
You're right. And so I
Mm-hmm.
had to take a step back and I was just like, literally like, okay, I can see it from that perspective. And you know what? You're right. It was like, it was just this daily struggle with them. And I'm just like, okay, you know what?
Let it
I don't have to
go.
know what you guys are. I'm
Yep.
gonna let you guys ride, and I'm just gonna trust in the universe to protect you, and whatever happens, happens. And if I'm able to help resolve, I'm able to help resolve. And if I'm not, then that's okay too. So
But you know, you've mentioned control dramas a couple of times.
yeah,
And so can you actually break that down a little bit for our listening audience? Because most of us don't even realize that most of our situations are inside of control dramas, and those control dramas actually created who we are in relationships based on our upbringing. So can you break it down a little bit for the audience?
sure. So control dramas are basically where you encounter things that you really don't have any control over, but you want to have control over because it makes you feel safe. It makes you feel better. It makes you feel comfortable. It doesn't challenge you. It can be challenging as well. So I kind of take that back. It may or may not challenge you, but depending on what the scenario is. Okay, so for me as a parent, my control drama is always trying to make sure that my children are safe, because then that's been the biggest control drama for me since moving here, is trying to make sure I know where they are. If you're not at work, where are you? Can you keep your locator on so I can find you, or I know when you're at work, or whatever. And that's not something I really have any control over. They could step out at any moment and say, okay, well, I'm going out with my friends, or I'm going to go, skating, or I'm going to go bowling, or I'm, just whatever the scenario is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't have any control over that. So it makes me uneasy because, you know, if you listen to the media or the news, or you read any type of social media, someone's always getting snatched, or, a young lady has been kidnapped, or, a young man has been killed because of his, either he's gay or transgender or something like that. So for me, that's challenging as a parent, because I had a measure of security in my mind. So there's that control drama when I was in Chicago, that because I was there, that if something happened, that I could protect them. But in reality, I really couldn't. It didn't matter if I was there. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter that I'm not there now. There was really, if my child, if, it was their time and something was supposed to happen to them, I don't have any control over that. But my
Nope.
control drama made me believe that I did, that I could protect them, and that
Mm-hmm.
I could make sure that they were protected and that nothing, bad would happen to them. And
Mm-hmm.
in reality, I didn't have any control over that.
None.
Um,
But you know, I
Even
was
now,
looking.
it's just like,
Hmm.
you think about, and it's always little stuff like, um, if you have a friend that just met you and you wonder if they're really your friend, or if they really like you, or if they really, are vibing with you. And it's like, well, I can do this to make them like me. Control drama, because you're trying to control something that you can't. You can't control how that person's going to feel about you, how they're going to remain attached to you. None of that is in your control. So there has to be an effort to be authentic to the moment. And that's what I've had to learn.
Hmm.
Moment.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that
Yeah.
there's not a future, and that there's no tomorrow, and that I'm not supposed to plan for the future. But I had to learn how to appreciate moments so that I didn't get caught up on something that I didn't have any control over. It's
Yeah.
almost like, wanting something to be the way you want it to be and not having any control over, but trying to having that belief that you do.
So you know what I'm listening through the definitions that Richard Redfield, or I can't think his first name, but anyway, the guy that wrote the Celestine Prophecy,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and he actually put labels on how we operate inside of our control dramas. So it sounds like you tend to be the instigator,
Yeah.
and usually the instigator is someone who's looking, to find out information, right? And then
Yeah.
the other one is the interrogator, and the interrogator is going to find out information, but then they're going to use it against you. you know. And then I think the other one is like being aloof, like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care, or, And then the last one would be the poor me. Why did you do that? Why are you
Mhm.
acting like that? Why didn't you do what I said? So all of those are different ways of labeling the control drama, but we do use those with our children
Yeah.
as an attempt
Yes.
to make them actually do what we want them to do.
Yeah.
Dr. Sonji,
Definitely.
you're nodding
Yeah.
your head. What were you? Go ahead.
Absolutely. I think it's important that, as we talk about parental support, we recognize that in this parent-child relationship, it is a power dynamic
Yeah.
just by nature of the relationship. And parents and children are both aware of this power dynamic. And I think, as control dramas are played out, because control dramas are unconscious behaviors that we
Yes.
do, we play out in those various roles that Mook just explained.
Mm.
And so, and why? Why do we take on the role of being aloof? Why do we take on the role of the poor me or the interrogator or the intimidator? We
Mm.
take on those roles because we're trying to do one of three things. We're trying to reestablish power in this relationship.
Yep.
We're trying to get our way. We want
Yep.
to make others pay attention to us,
Yep.
or we want to elicit a reaction from our child. And
Yes.
oftentimes we've convinced ourselves that we're behaving this way because, that reaction that we want to elicit from our child is something that we feel is good for them. And so
Mhm.
it's this imposition, right? And we have the upper hand because of this power dynamic when the children are younger. And you're going to get a child that bucks against the power dynamic and tries to establish some type of foothold in power, or a child that's going to just kind of fold to the power dynamic. So what's their response to the stressors that are introduced as parents try to play out these control dramas over the children, as opposed to facilitating their growth, as you explained in the very beginning, Enedina, about um, the way you talk to your children and teach your children and set them up to make life, and not just be in life, right? So, but oftentimes, if we're honest, we don't necessarily see that, because we're taught, we go back to our own experiences. We think about what control dramas were used to get us to comply, to
Right.
fit into a way of thinking or a stereotype of the status quo. And while we may have rejected those, as we sometimes as parents, I'm willing to admit there are times where in a situation you feel desperate to get your way, to have established your power, because you feel like you foresee something that the child may not foresee. And so what do? We lean on those control dramas in
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
order to try to reestablish power and get our way. But the
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
control dramas and the way your children respond to the control dramas actually gives you some insight into how your children respond to stressors. Do they flee? Do they fight? Do they freeze? Do they fawn? How are they responding? And so this is, again, I've said self-awareness before. Being aware of yourself is the best way that you can support your children. So being able to acknowledge that, yeah, when I become aloof and dismissive, like when I'm like, I'm not listening to you, I can't
Mm-hmm.
talk to you right now, that type of behavior in response to trying to get some control back, that's a control drama. And we have to
Yeah.
be, as parents, be able to check ourselves when we are abusing our power through various methods of control.
Yeah.
And that I don't know about you all, but I grew up in a house where it was always intimidation. It was always do what I said.
Yep.
That was just
Yeah.
it. And
Yep.
don't ask me any question. And it's just like,
Yes.
you know, it was easy to become aloof, right? Oh, growing up later, right? Like, just don't be around anybody. Don't pay any attention. That's how I maintain my own control. So that's really great. So
Mm-hmm.
self awareness in being present, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time, as parents, we're working, and our children are at school, right? So how does that being present and self-awareness, how do you actually establish that when all of us are so busy, and especially as we start with our younger children, because they're learning patterns from us
Uh-huh.
as
Mm-hmm.
they're younger, and if they get used to us not being there, not being present, then we're
Mm.
actually creating a different dynamic in the relationship. So what would you tell parents, about how to establish that trust with your child, when you can't be present all the time? But it's a way to do it, but what would you suggest?
Mm. I think that establishing trust comes through communication when you are with the child, and helping the child understand your movements when you're not there, and not leaving them to imagine or guess what's happening when they can't see you with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm glad you. So this reminds me of a story, a very short story. When my son was 2 years old, I'm a working mom, right? And I work, and I'm very committed to the work that I do. I love the work that I do. I put in a lot of hours, and sometimes that's Saturday, sometimes that's Sunday as well. So one Saturday morning, I was getting up before the kids, caught myself sneaking out to go to the gym, and my little 2-year-old runs from the back as I was going to the door. Mommy, where are you going? Where are you going? He was so panicked, like I was like abandoning him. And I was like,
Too.
"What?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? I'm about to go to the gym. You mean you're not going to work?" He said with so much fear and trepidation. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting up leaving for work thinking I'm doing this great thing. And this kid is probably having this reaction every time I get up and go to work. And then he just caught me on this Saturday morning because it was later, and I'm usually gone before the sun comes up. I'm
Mm-hmm.
coming home when the sun goes down. I had no idea I was doing that and causing that type of anxiety until I saw it in
Saw
his
it.
face. But I never explained, I never talked to him about what I do when I get up and go in the morning. I just, where you going? I'm going to work. Okay, y'all, I'm going to work. But what is this work? What's happening at this
What
place?
does
This
work
place
look
that I
like?
work. What does it look like? What does it feel like? I don't
Mm.
understand it. Why is it? Why are you always going there? To the work. Why are you always coming from there, from the work? But there was no communication. I never took the time and invested the time to explain, because first of all, I wasn't aware even that I had been spending that much time away.
Mm.
But I also had not paid enough attention to his reactions, you
Mm.
know. And so I wasn't paying attention. I was steeped in providing, because this is my job and this is what I do, and I do
Mm.
this for you. Yet I'm not paying attention to how what I do for you um is affecting
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. And Adina, what would you add to that?
So for me, I was a little bit luckier because um I had a very good co-parent who was very much available if I was unable to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So me and my ex-husband would work together where if I wasn't there, he was there. If I had to go to work, or if I had to, if I was working another job, or if I had to do something else, then he would, kind of step into that. And then their godfather was always available as well.
Mm-hmm.
I lucked up because of the type of job that I had. So they had like, flex scheduling. So I would have every other Monday off. And I was just very dedicated to making sure that I showed up, because
Mm-hmm.
when I had the activities as a child, my mom never came to any of those. And the one time she did, she criticized me. And I was just like, okay, I'm not
You
doing this.
never get invited again.
Right. And so, I would make sure when I came home that, I would have them come in to cook with me. So they would come to the kitchen, we would cook together, and we would have dinner together, and, we play video games together. So I would make sure that they knew that when I was home, and it was about them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was one time, right in the beginning, when my ex-husband and I had separated, and I had moved back in with my mom, and I had to go. I was going bowling that evening, but I was also going to get my hair done after bowling. And so, but they forgot that. They forgot that I was going to get my hair done. And so, 10 o'clock came, 11 o'clock came. Now, unbeknownst to them, my phone died. And so I had to wait until I got to my car to charge my phone. But
Mm-hmm.
when I charged my phone, it was like three voicemails, and each one of them progressively got more panic, where they're like, and Triana's like, no, no, I can hear her in the background. She's like, no, mommy said she was going bowling and she didn't call us and she's not answering her
Mhm.
phone. And they were terrified that something had happened to me. And so I called my mom because I knew that they would be asleep already. And I said, can you please go downstairs and, tell the children that I'm on my way home? I said, they called me, they're scared. So she went down there and she told them, she's like, your mom says she's okay. She's on her way home. And then all I just heard was relief. Okay, so when I got there, she's just like, and you didn't say that. I said, I did. I told you I was going to do that, but they were terrified. So it was like the beginning stages of that abandonment that could have taken over. I think we did a pretty good job of, being available where it didn't become a humongous issue with them.
Mhm.
But again, it's again with the that control drama about protecting them and trying to,
Mhm.
just make sure that their feelings are protected and that they're okay. You
Mhm.
know, um, there was one time where, and this is when they were older, this was maybe like 4, 5 years ago when they were at home. It was during the summertime. They were at home and their dad, he worked like right up the street from where we stayed. But I was downtown. But somebody was trying to break into the apartment and they were literally like banging the door, like trying to break the doorknob. And so they called me panicked. And when I tell you, I ran all the way from the train station for my job all the way to the garage. I didn't even tell my supervisor what I was doing. I just left and I sped home. Come to find out, it was the management company. But they were terrified. But they did what I told them to do. I said, call the police, run
Mhm.
up to my room, lock the door, and go in the closet. That's all. That's all I want you to do. Because my door for my bedroom, for whatever, it was the hardest door to get into. It was like you had to jimmy rig it to just really come in. But I'm like, go in there, lock the door, go in the closet, and just wait for the police to get there. And their dad got there, but he was like ready to beat the guy up, and it was like it was a new management company that had taken over our building and they did not realize that we were in a duplex and they thought that that was a vacant
Right.
apartment
Area.
or the basement.
Mhm.
And so the guy was like so apologetic, but I was terrified and they were too, but they did what I told them to do.
Yeah,
So they,
it's so interesting though. It's so when you listen to it, it's like the being aware, like you don't even know they're going to react like that until the situation happens.
mm-hmm,
So it's like you have to learn in that moment. And that's what we're talking about. Our children matter. You have to
mm-hmm,
in that moment realize, oh, wait a minute, my reactions, the things that I do, my behavior really does have an impact
mm-hmm,
on this child in my relationship. And I
mm-hmm.
think as parents, we take that for granted. We
Yeah,
literally think that no matter what I do, they're gonna be all right. Because we do know they're gonna be all right. But we don't
yeah,
think about how that emotional, impact hits them.
yeah,
So that
definitely.
yeah, that self-awareness is very important. And again, communication,
Yeah.
talking about it, telling them, and then making sure, I'm sure you calmed them down after all that had happened and made sure that
Mm-hmm.
they're okay. But
Yeah.
you don't know until it happens that, this is how they're going to react,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So now I want to get a little bit deeper into us as parents and looking at why our healing from our childhood is so important and how we effectively parent our children. And when I'm working with clients, it's so interesting to hear people say, "Oh, my mama was awesome. My or my daddy was great. I didn't have no issues with them. We might not have had any money and da da da, but I lived a good childhood." And then down the line, you realize some other things happened, and you're like, "Well, do you realize how that affected you?"
Mm-hmm.
Right. So most of the time we don't realize how it. So how have you actually healed in order to support being an effective parent,
So
Dr. Sanji? Mm-hmm.
I think doing exactly kind of what you said is your inner child work. That includes shadow work as well. So
Mm-hmm.
you being going into a space where you're intentionally focusing in on understanding the parts of yourself that you have either repressed or ignored or pushed aside into the darkness to hold on to um, whatever ideology of yourself makes your ego feels good
Mm-hmm.
about yourself, right? So even if it's you know, wanting to wanting to protect the kind of purity or sacredness of your parents, right? And the image of your parent, because you acknowledge that, yes, you know, there were struggles, for example, and but they were a good person and they did the best they can. So you want to give them flowers while they can smell them, right? You want to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you're respecting them and showing that you do care
Honor.
for
You
them.
gotta honor
You
your
want to
parents.
honor them, right? You want to honor your parents.
Mm-hmm.
But as I mentioned earlier, you know, cosmically, there is a wounding that we will experience from our father. There is a wounding that we experience from our mother. And as we become adults, it is our responsibility to explore what that wounding is, to
Mm-hmm.
be honest about it, and to not hide it and tuck it away. But that just comes from going back into your inner child work and asking yourself those tough questions. You know, what is a time that I was angry with my mother or my father? And what is a time, you know, what was going on in that instance? Why did I feel the way that I feel?
Mm-hmm.
What's at the core of that? What was I thinking? You know, what did I feel in my body? You know, how did my spirit feel when that happened? So exploring those will begin to open up the door, or at least give you some breadcrumbs into moving towards understanding kind of some of those aspects of the wounding that your mother or your father may have caused you. And it's okay because it was designed that way, right?
Yeah,
It's
we
designed that
actually
way to
called that work right that we do. We call them master teachers. They actually
exactly.
did what they were supposed to do.
They doing what they're supposed to do
Mhm.
and embracing it and understanding that it's okay. Because what happens when you don't do that inner work, the inner child work or the shadow work, you are now parenting from a place of an illusion,
Mm.
and not really necessarily dealing with your own reality. And so now you're trying to construct a narrative founded on an illusion of who you are. And you're trying to construct a narrative of who you are as a parent and who you want your child to be, because you see your child now as a product of yourself as a parent and not as an independent entity in and of themselves.
They have to do their own work.
And they have to do their own work, and it's all an illusion because you're when you don't do your inner work and your shadow work, you spend a lot of energy protecting that illusion. You spend a lot of energy holding your mask up to your face, because that's basically what that illusion is. It's a mask that we're wearing. And so that's why it's so important to not be afraid. I had to do this work myself,
Yeah.
because and when you opened up with, you know, my parents great, I felt that way about my mom. And
Mm.
I had to go in and do that work. And there's no knock against her at all. See, you know, she's a wonderful woman. But there was some opinions that I developed and made about her as I observed her, as I was growing and maturing, that I had to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
That's very cool. And Adina, what would you add to that?
Well, I don't
Wait.
really think my
Not.
healing started. For me, my healing didn't start until when it came to my relationship with my mom until I met Shemsu-t. And I started to dive a little bit deeper into who I was as a person and understand why I reacted to the things the way that I did and why I saw things the way that I did, especially as a parent. I was determined not to be the way that my mom was with me, with my son and my daughter, but I also had to resolve the feelings that I had with her. And during the course of me going through my certification with Motion Suit, I read this book called Your Soul's Plan by Robert Schwartz. And
Mm-hmm.
that book had the most profound effect on me. And even with me understanding, that, you literally, that this, as you call it, the wounding that your parents are,
Mm-hmm.
destined to give you. Um, that I agreed to that this was a contract that I had between my mom and I, as for her being my mom in this incarnation. That was really hard for me to swallow, but it made sense because had she not been the way that she was, had I not felt a lack of love. I would not have been as loving as I was to my son and my daughter as I
Mhm.
was and as I currently am. Um, that was a really difficult pill to swallow, and it was really hard for me to reconcile it. But once I did, I was able to move past it. So, you know, I would, tell Musha Sood, I'd be like, okay, I went to go visit my mom, and I took her food and I fed her, and she was like, okay, well, that's good because you're nurturing that. And I'm like, yeah, but it was just like, you know, when she finally made her transition, there I didn't feel anything. Like I wasn't sad, but I also wasn't still like bitter the way I was
Right.
leading up to when I got my certification. And so I was able to just release her. But with my family and all the like I told my Musha, so we have like very similar backgrounds where it's just like, that epic shroud of secrecy within your family,
Mhm.
just as far as just as far as everything. And so um for me it was really hard. It was very important for me to reconcile the lessons that I got from how she parented me, how my her and my dad were both emotionally unavailable. And it kind of the it was like a revelation for me, like as far as me dating, like with my dad being the master teacher, where I encountered two relationships with two men who had substance abuse, like alcoholic issues.
Mhm. Mhm.
But then I realized that the only time my dad was loving towards me or playful towards me was when he had been drinking. And
Okay.
so again, it was just a way for me, I was able to reconcile that and understand why I chose those mates and what I was supposed to learn from them. So I think it's really important. I don't think the healing ever really stops, even once they're gone, because there's still going to be triggers that happen when you're, dealing with your children or even dealing with individuals in your circle, where your reaction is going to be again based on, the master teachers that you've had. It's easier for me. So like when I'm dealing with something and I see a trait in someone that is triggering for me, where I'm just like, well, why am I reacting to it like this? Why is that bothering me? And when I'm able to ask myself that question, I can recognize it pretty rapidly and see what it is that's causing the issue for me. And then I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But it took a while to get to that point. But I'm like a master at it down here now. My friends are always like, how do you do that? And I'm like,
I'm sitting here listening to
a
you,
lot of
and,
work.
and I'm remembering our work together, and I remember,
Yep.
move Shemsu, I'm gonna kill this girl at work. Yeah. Hold on, don't kill her today.
Right. Like literally that would be my dialogue, but it's gotten easier. It's gotten easier and easier,
You don't even
and I'm
call
just
me
really
unless it's
grateful
like, hey,
for it.
let's go out. What you doing? What's going on?
Hmm.
I like, but I just want to acknowledge you because man, that was, clearly 9, 10 years ago when you were working through some of that, and you've come a long way. Thank you. Just
Thank
thank you
you.
for allowing me to participate. I'm just, when you were talking, I got so full. I got so moved because, I remember those conversations.
Man, it took a while, but I don't even, like I don't really post. I don't do the, oh, it's Father's Day, I'm gonna post, because my family knows, they know what my relationship was, my parents. So I don't really
Yeah.
like, cape for social media or whatever. But
Right.
I can now, when there is, a so-called holiday, where you're supposed to acknowledge or, think back. I can have my moments where I can just have a moment of gratitude, for
Yes.
what I went through as a child and how that helped me grow into the person that I am today. And
Yeah.
so I'm happy to be able to get to a point where I can say, like, I'm happy for the person that I am today, whereas opposed to where I'm just like, oh, forever a victim. And I don't like being a victim.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
tell people, as traumatic as my life seemed, I would
Hmm.
still choose to come back that way because I rarely meet a person like me.
Hmm.
And I appreciate who I am. I appreciate those things that I learned,
Hmm.
that actually has me be who I am without regret, or
Yeah.
bitterness.
Yeah.
Because I meet a lot of people that went through similar things, but they're very bitter and
Mm.
just unwilling to see like yeah, but this is part of the journey. You know,
Yeah.
this is how we grow and expand through trauma. And life will. I mean, society teaches you that you're supposed to be a victim all your life, and it's like, no,
Hmm.
no, these are learning. These are strengthening things.
Right.
They're not
Lessons.
some. Yeah, they're actually blessings in disguise.
Hmm.
So speaking of that, how do you use mirror work to actually work through some of that stuff? Because both of you have mentioned mirror a little bit. So how
Mhm.
do you use mirror work in your relationship with children when you're actually wanting to offer parental support? What does mirror work look like?
So I love the idea of mirror work because I know I was writing my talking points. I thought about it, it came to me that you often hear, at least in the Black community, that your kid is going to be just like you, or they're going to be like a worse version of you, like you're going to get it back,
You just
when they're
Yep.
like,
said
Yep.
right? You
Yep.
kind of hear that, right? And I
Yep.
don't I don't know if our elders knew that in their wisdom they were, warning us that our children will be our mirrors.
mm,
Hmm.
And there are seven different mirrors, and I'm not going to name the seven different mirrors, but each mirror reflects something different. Some mirrors reflect something you lost. Some mirrors are a direct reflection of something you desire.
mm,
Some mirrors reflect your relationship with your parents. Some mirrors reflect your relationship with God. So the seven esteemed mirrors, and which is Greg Braden has
mm-hmm.
a YouTube video. It's about 2 hours long. So
Yeah.
break it up into chunks. But he really does a great job of explaining these seven mirrors and giving examples of how the seven mirrors work. And so our elders were right. Our children show us ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and depending on what the moment is and what the what's going on at the time, they are being a particular mirror for us. But again, I go back to self-awareness, because you have to first be aware that that there are mirrors,
Mm-hmm.
and B, be aware of things that you may feel like you lost, or things that you desire, or have an understanding of what your relationship with God is, what your relationship with your parents are, for just some of the mirrors that exist. Because our children are often placed in a position where we think we're reacting to them, but what we're really reacting to is what's being reflected back to us.
Yeah.
And sometimes we like it, and so we accept those, but sometimes we don't. And then we may react negatively towards our children because of it, because we haven't taken the time to do our work to become self aware. So, again, you're going to hear me say this over and over and over again. The best way to support your children is to do your work and to become
Mm-hmm.
self aware, so that when you see the mirrors reflected back to you, so that you can temper your communication with them, and all the things that you've heard Enedina say is very important. So that's how, I think the mirror work is very important. Is first learn about the mirrors,
Mm-hmm.
identify them, and do that inner work, so that when they come up in your face, you don't take it out externally. You turn back in and deal with what's being reflected, because that means it's something that you haven't dealt with, something that you
Mm-hmm.
haven't resolved.
And that is so precious, because a lot of times we shut down everybody before we look at ourselves, right? You're
Hmm.
Yeah.
disrespecting me. Don't talk like that. Don't say that. When actually, what we can do is just, I remember my daughter, I think she was going through her first Saturn return. She had to be about 27, 28. And she was at my house visiting. And she said to me, "You were a horrible mother when I was growing up." And as shocked as I was, and I taught myself early on not to ever be shocked at anything they say, I said, "You know what? I can hear that." I said, "I didn't have a mother growing up. I can't even tell you I knew what that looked like. But what I do know is that I was committed to loving you. I was committed to learning what that looked like, because I had no idea what it looked like. So if you say I was a horrible mother, from your experience, I can hear that. And now what I want to do is work on our relationship, because I'm still your mother. I can't go back on the past and redo any of that. But right now, I'm still invested in our relationship. And I've had to say to parents, we don't we're not perfect, right, so Dr. Sonji, we were talking about that earlier. I'm not perfect,
Right.
but I definitely know that I love you. So whatever I did wrong, it was not from lack of love. Is more from a lack of ignorance and not
Mm-hmm.
being self-aware. I was not as self-aware as a younger mother as I was, as I got older, because our children teach us.
Yes.
And Adina, what were you gonna say?
I definitely can see that, especially with my son and my daughter.
Hmm.
When he's being obstinate, that's I can see that mirror of how I can be like that at times. And I'm just like, why? Look at him like, but I love the fire because, it lets me know that, when I feel like he's weak, he's not. He's very strong. And I'm happy to be able to acknowledge that in him. With my daughter, she's always reflecting back to me the love, the nurturing. Like when I'm with her, you know, when people see us together, like my friends, this when they came to visit me this last time, and that was their first time seeing us together. And she was just all up under me. And she's just like, Mom, and oh, I love you. And she's just kissing me on the cheek and he's kissing me. And they just like, oh. And I'm like, yeah, it's like this all the time. And it's like, and it really is like that all the time. Like when we're together, like she's just like the love is just, safe. I just feel that safeness and that security with her. Um, I don't really feel that with them I can do any wrong, and then they'll remind me that I can. Because and it's always my daughter. She'll say stuff to me like, like you're the most amazing mother. Like she adores me, like loves me to life. And I appreciate that from her. But she'll also say stuff to me like, but you know how when I say I don't want to talk to you about something, because she's like, I know that you love me so much that you'll try to fix it. And sometimes I don't want you to fix it. I just want to figure it
Wow,
out.
that's
And
so
I was like,
profound.
right, isn't it? And annoying.
That sounds like a
Control
control
drama.
drama.
That sounds like a
Control
control
drama.
drama.
And I'll just like, what? And she'll say that to me. And when she says that to me, she'll give me an example. She never just says stuff like, to like be hurtful or anything, but she'll be like, she'll just be like, okay, well, remember when I was going through this situation and, and you were asking me what was wrong and I didn't want to tell you because I knew that you were going to try to offer insight to try to help me figure it out. And I didn't want you to try to help me figure it out right then. She was like, it's not that I don't want you to try to help me. I just want you to do it when I'm ready for it. And when I'm ready for it, I'll ask you for it. And I
Wow.
was just like, okay. I'm like, I can see that. And, I had to accept that. That was hard. But again, control drama. I was just like, okay, you know what? And that's fine. And I have to accept that.
Yeah.
But boy, both of them have taught me so much about myself.
I
And when
love
they
that.
reflect stuff back to me, I just be like, but I'm happy that our relationship, that we communicate well enough that she felt comfortable enough to say that to me, where she knew I wasn't going to get mad at her or I wasn't going to be like, denying it. Because I knew exactly what she was talking about. And I was just like, okay, I said, well, as your mom, and again, it was just, that was, which again led back to me not having that with my mom. Like I would never have been able to go to her for
Overcompensating
that.
for it, not
Right.
having it. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so it just, when I see those and I'm able to absorb those lessons and, acclimate so that I learned the lesson and it's not repeated,
Mm-hmm.
it's always a joyous occasion for me, for both of us, for all three of us, because they're just like, okay, we got past that, what's next,
So,
since,
so what
you
is
just
it?
think so.
So what is it that you do? Because there are times, like when your daughter's saying there's some form of resistance there, right? There's some, I don't want you to help me, right? And it's not a negative, but when you recognize resistance in your children, what is a more positive and effective way to deal with it instead of intruding or
Mhm.
imposing or insisting? because a lot of times, again, it shows up inside of the control drama, but a lot of times, we create even more resistance in them. What were you going to say, Dr. Sanja?
Um, I was gonna say, depending on the timing, you could have a conversation in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the age of the child as well, you could frame it in an age appropriate way. But if you notice resistance, of course, you wouldn't be as technical as, "Hey, Johnny, I see you're resisting me, and you want to talk about," right?
No.
But you would highlight, you would bring the resistance to the forefront. Um, you know, it's I just said X, Y, and Z to you, and I noticed that you shrugged, or what, help me understand, what you're thinking when I said that, or how did that make you feel when I said that. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, that's all predicated upon having already pre-established this open form of communication
Mm-hmm.
with your children.
Mm-hmm.
That has to pre-exist before you can then dig into any resistance. You have
Yeah.
to make sure that they feel like that they already have a safe space within which they can communicate these types of feelings to you. Just like, Enedina gave the example of her daughter. That only happened because she created a safe space
Mm-hmm.
that already existed within which she could express herself. But just talking about it and then respecting the response.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So if the response is, I don't know, of course you can push a little bit and ask them to think about it, but having discernment, knowing when to push and when to pull back. And if they say, "Well, I don't want to talk about it right now," okay, well, can we talk about it later? Sure. And then making sure you follow up on that conversation later, but respecting the response, because it reminds your children that you see them as humans, and not as objects of ownership, or just a person that you're responsible for. So I think that when you see the resistance, don't react to it. You know, don't ignore it. They have a right to feel the way they feel about something you've said or done. Um, but I think it's a good practice as a parent to explore that, because you want to help them think through and talk through. You're not holding them accountable to giving you an answer for their resistance. You're not making them explain away why they resisted the way they did, but you want to
Hmm.
help them experience making a connection between an emotion or a thought they're having and their external behavior, and understanding that people observe your external behavior, and
A
it
message.
communicates something to them, it
Mm-hmm.
sends a message. And
Mm-hmm.
so I want you to be aware. You help them cultivate their own self-awareness by pointing out moments and times of resistance. It's really not for your benefit. You're going to benefit from it. That's just the icing on the cake, but you really do it for their benefit and their growth.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just to piggyback off of what you said, we had a scenario where she was supposed to come down here for the holiday, but she got a job offer for a paid internship. And so, she was like, well, I'm not going to be able to come, you know, down there. Or she didn't say that initially. The conversation turned into where I'm like asking her, I'm like, okay, so what day do you think you'll be able to come down? And she instantly thought that I was trying to, like manipulate her to come for the holiday. And I was like, no. I'm like, I wouldn't mind if you came for the holiday,
Mm-hmm.
but if you don't come for the holiday, but you still come, I'm still going to be happy that you came and that you were here to be with me. And, and just, we were able to be here to support each other. And so I said, well, can you tell me why you believe that I was, going to try to manipulate you into doing, X, Y, Z? And then,
Mm-hmm.
once I explained to her why her coming down before the holiday would really save her money because of the flight, then she's like, oh, and my daughter's like really like, she's like very, very, very frugal, but she's very good like with her money. And so I was just like, okay, well, I was asking you that because the closer to the holiday you get to purchasing your ticket, the more expensive the ticket is going to be. So that's the reason why I was asking if you wanted to come before that. And she was just like, oh, but she didn't even think about that. She just
No.
instantly thought that I was trying to get her to do what I wanted her to do. And I'm like, no, I know you like to save money. So mom was just trying to look out for you. And it was like,
But
okay.
that's
So,
good too, because that's just in that moment. You know what I'm
mhm,
saying? It could have went either way, depending
right,
on how you or her reacted. You know,
right.
and especially as our children move from younger people into a so-called adulthood because we don't have as much leeway as
Right.
we think we do.
Right. Yep.
Or as we would want to. So
Yep.
we have to release even more of our control drama and
Yeah.
even more of our expectations of who we think they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So that's really great. Now, do either of you use love languages in your relationship with your children? Do you know what your children's love languages are, or is that something that you utilize?
I love languages.
Yes.
And I do. And there is one that children can take. That's actually one of my resources as well that I'm going to share. Five Love Languages. There's a website. If you Google Five Love Languages, they have their own website, and there's one that you can take with your children. It's very easy, 20 questions. It's fun to do with them. They have two age groups. So I believe it goes as young as 5, maybe a little younger. And so I did one with my daughter when I found this quiz, because I had done it before. As a matter of fact, my husband and I did our love languages as part of our premarital um, counsel counseling. And so we know what each other's love languages are. Once we learned each other's and understood what that was, we began observing the children and like trying to guess, like, okay, their love language must be, physical touch, or their love language must be quality time or acts of service. And so knowing what your children's love language is, I think is wonderful, and letting them know what it is too.
Yeah.
So I did it with my daughter, and we both thought that her primary one would be physical touch, but it was actually quality time, which made sense as
Mm,
well. But
mm,
we were both a little surprised, and we talked about why we felt and why we thought the way that we thought. But it also is important because, as I mentioned before, as a working mom who's kind of I throw myself into what I do, that quality time is key. So when I
mm.
think of those moments, as I reflect back on coming in from a long day of work and being bombarded at the door with, "Hey, let me tell you what happened today," and everybody trying to vie for who's going to go first and tell their story of their day first. And you just want to be like, "Let me take off my coat and put this heavy purse down and get up these hills, please."
Yes.
Right? So you're trying, and that's in your mind, but for them, that was a love moment, right? So
Mm.
they wanted to spend that quality time. So which makes the rides to school in the morning even that much more valuable, or the rides home from
Oh yeah.
school even that much more valuable, because that's our quality time. We're in our little cocoon and we're
Mm.
talking and we're sharing, or we're singing or whatever it is that we're doing. But all those things matter. And
Mm.
now I understand like the impact of that as well. So yeah, the love languages are great. And so if you're like, my primary love language, physical touch, is way down on my list of 5, but it's
Mhm.
my daughter's second. So I have
Mhm.
to endure, unsolicited hugs quite a bit.
We say endure. I'm crying.
That's okay. You know, she
Right.
tells me,
I'm
I
coming
think I
in. I'm coming in.
I
Oh
think
my
I give
goodness.
great hugs,
Mhm.
when I'm ready to give a great hug, but oftentimes she's like, "You're not hugging me back." I'm like, "Okay, let me move my
Give you
arm."
this hug. Yeah. That's
So,
very true.
it's but I understand that. So I can receive that, not as an intrusion in my space, or not seeing her as an energy vampire, but
Right.
understanding that she just wants to express love in this moment. So let me show her love in her language. And then when I want to show her love, where my expression might be an act of service, that's a
Mhm.
little lower down for her.
Mhm.
So I want to spend some quality time with her, or I want to give her a big hug because I want to communicate to her that I love her
Her with
in
her
her language.
in her language. That's very cool. Aurora is with us. Aurora, can you share? And if you have any questions, because we're moving into the end, would you like to share or ask our speakers any questions, Aurora?
I,
Hey!
hey, I don't have.
Bye.
Sorry, I was actually had a mask on, so I was doing self care while I was.
Boo was like, "Poop." There you
I'm
go.
sorry.
No, it's okay. I just didn't want you guys to see me looking like that, so that's why I turned my camera off.
Okay.
Um, I don't have any questions. Noah is 13 years old. And I've worked for the last 2 years with teenagers. And so always trying to just gain some insight on how to be a better parent. And it's funny because when I was off the camera, Noah came on. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm in a course about parenting. And he looked at me and I'm like, yeah, I'm learning. I'm all learning for you, you know?
Yes.
So I did want to mention about the love languages. I did test Noah, and he's words of affirmation, I think it's
Yeah.
words.
Affirmations, yeah.
Yeah, and then
Of
also,
encouragement.
and I tested my mother. And that once I learned that she was gifts, that was like, oh, so now all I have to do is go like get like something like a donut or cupcake and
Yes.
bring it to her.
Oh my goodness.
It makes her feel so good and so loved. Like you would have thought I presented like a diamond to her.
Wow.
And so testing her was helpful for me in changing starting to change the dynamic of my relationship with my mother. And I am in therapy about the relationship with my mother because I knew in order for me to heal, I had to work on healing with her because I am she and she is I, right?
Yep.
So as long as I kept having that resistance there, I knew it just was not going to benefit me as a woman, as a mother, as a sister, as a human being. And so I've been doing that for a year and a half. Things are better. I do still have my rackets, but I noticed you guys use different language as well. What did
Yes.
you call it? Master drama or something like that?
But control drama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, just wanting to peek in and see if there's any other new tools for me. I had done Noah's chart a while ago. But there was one chart, doctor, that you mentioned, the natal one, that I had not done. And I actually don't know what the difference is between the two. But it's worth a revisit because that was years ago. And now, he's going on 14. So, maybe to refresh my memory, to see, how to better help him. And I also like if we are having a conversation and he comes out very judgmental because he's a Virgo.
Ooh, Lord.
And I'm a Gemini. So he's keeping me organized.
Kudos to Gemini moms, man. Let me tell you.
So I know that Virgos can be very critical and judgmental. And so I try and work on that. Like I will say something like, oh, maybe we could rephrase that. So instead of saying it like this, try saying it like this. It doesn't sound so harsh or judgmental or critical. But then I also, like Dina was saying, I try to behave the way I want him to behave. I apologize when I am wrong and he is right. And I will say things like that. You know what? You were right and I was wrong. Oh my God. That's great that you were right. So that he can see that I do respect him as a human being. So, but it is continuous work.
Yes, it is.
Just when I think, I've got it, it's like, I don't got it.
Well, we get fine-tuned all the time. I like what Dr. Chandra said. She said all the time, it just keeps going, So we find out a little bit more about ourselves through our children.
Yes. Oh my God, so many lessons. Oh, and he has been with his dad for 9 months. So that's another reason to be in therapy because I took it very personal. My ego was like, what did I do wrong? Like my soul knew I was making the right decision, but my ego kept coming back and like, what did you do? Were you too mean? Could you have done something different? So it was another conversation with the therapist. So he was gone for 9 months. And he comes back and he's like an inch taller and
Oh,
just
different child, not a nuance.
yes, yes. And
I
it's
should say different person, not even child at
yes.
14, right?
And unfortunately, things weren't as positive as I would want them to be as a mother. But even with that and having the conversation with him and saying, your dad, you can still love him, and your expectations just he may not be able to fulfill them right now. But did you ask for what you wanted? Kind of
Mhm.
coaching him through that you have to let people know what you want. You can't just assume that your dad knows because he hasn't been parenting you for 13 years.
Wow.
So yeah, just trying to not yeah coaching and parenting, all of that rolled into one.
All rolled into one. And I wanted to let you know that Dr. Sandra did answer your question, and she put some information in the
Okay.
chat.
Okay.
So if you look in the chat, you'll see some information about looks like the natal chart and astrologer. So
Okay,
that would be
great,
helpful.
thank you.
Thank you, and thank
Welcome.
you for joining us. I appreciate your participation. It does matter.
Yes, yes, I love being in this energy space.
Yes, yes. Marshawn, did you have any question? I know that we're getting close to the hour, so we got about a minute for you to ask a question. If you have a question you need to ask, if not, that's okay too. Or a statement or something.
Oh, no questions. I just been listening the entire night, and I'm very proud of my mom
Yes.
for tonight. Um, it's been an eye opener for me because sometimes for me it's like sometimes your parents will do things and you don't think that they can be observant of their behaviors, or and then sometimes it's an eye opener for you because then you kind of like have to be observant of how you operate in certain situations as well. But I love what everybody said. Communication. I can't tell you how many times me and my mom communicate. Like I can just call her and she'll just listen. And yeah, hmm I love it.
Thank
Um,
you.
It's gonna make you
literally,
cry. Oh my God.
I think
literally,
it's
me
so
and her.
fabulous that where he was on last night and you were on tonight. I just
Oh
think that
God.
speaks volumes about just the work and the connection that we have, through the generations. And then Dr. Sanja and her husband. I think, I just wanted to say we have 8 couples that have completed Master Force
Oh
work. Yeah,
man.
so it does speak to the ability to use this work to grow your relationships, in marriage, so thank you, Marshawn,
Yes.
our youngest coach. And I think you were 16 when you went through our course, right?
Yes,
Six.
I was 16. I was taking my own courses, and then I was taking my school courses and then taking this course
Mhm.
at the same time.
Yeah,
So yeah.
Mhm.
you did well. Very cool. All right. Well, I before we sign off, we have to find out any resources that you want to share with the participants, and then Dr. Sandra and Adina, how can people reach you? What are you doing that they can participate with you? How can they communicate? As we sign off, please give all of those things.
Sure. Well, I provide group coaching. I do small groups of about 4 or 5 individuals, and I focus on alignment within and
Mhm.
alignment between yourself and your universe around you. And I target individuals who are in leadership roles,
Mhm.
or entrepreneurs. So they might have been in a leadership role for 5 years or less, whether that's a promotion to a new level, or you're an executive director or running an organization, because oftentimes finding alignment when you're working in that space within and
Mhm.
between can be challenging. And so I have a course that I do once a year. And I am accepting names for my course this year. A
Mhm.
course that I do once a year is 8 sessions. And we go into helping you come up with an alignment plan. We'll walk through some
Wonderful.
things to get you there. And so to reach me for group coaching, to be a part of the small group, you can reach me at Inside Job by Sonja. That's Sonji. So Inside Job by Sonja at gmail.com, just to communicate your interest in the group so that you can get on the email list and receive information. And I also do tarot readings that I provide on through the Etsy platform at Inside Job by Sandra. So if you're interested in having a tarot or oracle card reading, I am happy to do a reading for you. I do not do relationship readings.
Hmm.
I do not do past lives readings as well. I focus on your spiritual development and growth.
Very cool. What about you, Enedina?
I can be reached at efrencher2 at gmail.com. And they can also reach me on Instagram at honeydina10. I do love card readings and I do destiny card readings as well. So if you want to reach me, you can reach me at those two locations.
Wonderful. And then, Dr. Sandra, I heard you mention earlier a resource. I know that we got the one Robert Schwartz for Your Soul's Plan,
So
Yeah.
Greg Braden
Greg Braden.
on YouTube for the 7 Essene mirrors. If you want to learn more about how what your children might be reflecting back to you and learning about mirror work. And then I mentioned the 5 love languages. If you Google that,
Okay,
you'll have that on, you'll be able to access their website.
wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys, just thank you for such a wonderful evening. The last 3 nights have been just as fulfilling for me as I think they will be for others that listen. And Aurora is here and Marshawn. So I can't even express to you how grateful I am. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
Well, I just want to thank you for having me. I think I probably was resistant initially, but I just get caught up with stuff here with my sister and stuff. But this time I was open. I wasn't going to miss another
I think
opportunity.
for several years. That's how resistant you get. But thank you. I keep coming
I know, right? Lucky me.
back.
But it was great to meet Dr. Sanji. That was my first time actually meeting and interacting with her. So it was good to meet another fellow coach.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, this has been a great experience. Thank you, Moot, for being so patient with my slow responses in this in this process with the things that we have going on in
Yes.
our family. But I appreciate your patience. And Adina, it was great meeting you as well. I met Marshawn at the winter solstice
Yeah. Healing
event.
waters. Yeah.
Yes, the Healing Waters. And so I didn't meet him, but I observed him facilitate
Mm-hmm.
at that event. And so
Crazy.
now I've made the connection between him and his wonderful mother.
Yeah.
And, to the parents listening, I just want to just remind you guys that being a great parent begins with being self-aware, working on yourself,
Mhm.
um, doing your inner work, working on your self-care. It starts with you. And once you do that healing work on yourself, the road opens up to how awesome the awesome job you can do facilitating your child's path.
Yes, yes. Aurora, I see you on mic yourself. Did you have some final words to say?
No, just thank you, everyone.
You're
Thank,
welcome.
thank you. Yes, and thank you everyone listening, and even if you listen later, really appreciate your time that you take to listen to this. And then tomorrow night, our day 4, we're going to be talking to Osara Tin and Shalonda Bowler about the power, actually I could say the superpower of grandparents. So be sure to listen in, and even if you can't be present at the time, you can always go back and listen to the replay. And all of these videos are uploaded to our YouTube channel named Ignite Your Soul Connection. And so we're signing off until another time. Thank you. That's Our Children Matter.